Hi, I'm Robert Gardner from the Peabody Museum at Harvard. A filmmaker myself, I have grown up with the image of Robert Flaherty as the person who brought to the screen those memorable portraits of people, now film classics: Nanook, Moana, Man of Arran, and Louisiana Story. Because of his uniqueness as a man and as a creative artist, Flaherty has become a legend. It began while he was alive, and it has grown since his death in 1951. To help define the contributions of the artist and the special qualities of the man, we are privileged to have, on this series of 4 programs, Mrs. Robert Flaherty. Mrs. Flaherty, your husband has been called the father of documentary, but I imagine that you might find this attribution to be misleading.
Well, I think it has become misleading. I think we've come to think of the documentary film as the 16mm film, the short film, the film for special audiences. And Bob made his films for the general audience, for he made them as features to go out on the theatrical screen. The theatrical screen was the only screen there was at that time. So you can understand that his approach would be quite different from the approach of the documentary filmmaker today. It was entirely different from the theatrical approach.
Well, what was his approach then?
His approach was exploratory. He was an explorer. I was an explorer first, he said, and a filmmaker a long way after. He made his first film, Nanook of the North, not until he was almost 40 years old. And he brought to filmmaking an explorer's mind and a process of discovery. All art, he said, is a kind of exploring. To discover and reveal is the way every artist sets about his business. Now, science is exploration. Its aim is discovery. Its method is exploratory. In the Flaherty films, art and science come together. The process is the same. The search is the same, a search for truth.
What sort of search and what sort of truth was your husband after?
He was searching for the spirit of peoples. He made 3 films all on the same theme: the spirit with which a people comes to terms with its environment. Before he made Nanook, he'd already made an Eskimo film. But he said it was a bad film. There was plenty of information in it about these interesting, strange people. But information was not what he wanted. I had lived with these people, he said, as one of them. For 6 years, I had shared the hazards of their daily hunt for food. Here they were, with less resources than any other people on earth, living in a country in which no other race could survive. And yet, they were happy. They were the happiest people I've ever known. My only reason for making the film was my deep admiration for these people.
He knew his subject well, then?
He knew his subject and loved it. No one could have known or loved it better. What he did not know, as yet, was his camera. I had learned to explore, he said. I had not learned to reveal. So he went back into the north. And he met Nanook, mighty hunter of the Idivimu tribe of Eskimo. And up there on the bleak, barren coast of the bay of Hudson Bay, halfway to the North Pole, in a one-room hut, snow-walled to the eaves in winter, with Nanook, he began his 30 years research of the motion picture camera. He took with him not only camera and film, but a developing, projecting, and printing outfit, so that he could see what he was getting as he went along, what his camera was doing, what it could do, what the nature was of this new machine. Nanook of the North is the biography of an Eskimo family through a year. You see them coming into the trading posts, bringing their furs to trade. You see them building their igloo, and then inside the igloo, sheltered from the storm, they go to sleep. Nanook is a silent film, for at that time, in 1922, all films were silent.
Tell me, Mrs. Flaherty, was Nanook a commercial success?
Yes, and that was the extraordinary thing about it, that a film of this kind, the first of its kind, a film of just ordinary people doing the ordinary things they do, being themselves, should have had the impact it did. Nanook died 2 years after the film was made. He died, as so many of his people do, of starvation. But by that time, the film had gone around the world. Nanook's death was published as far away as Tokyo. It was published in Singapore. In Malaya, there was a new word for strong man. It was Nanook. In Germany, 10 years later, I bought an Eskimo pie. It was called a Nanook, and Nanook's smiling face beamed up at me from the wrap. And the film goes on, even today. There's something timeless about it. And I have my own theory as to why this is. I believe that when Nanook and Nyla and little Aligu smile out at us from the screen, we are completely disarmed. We smile back at them. They are themselves. We become ourselves in turn. All that might separate us from these people falls away from us. In spite of the differences between us, perhaps even more because of the differences, we feel that we are one with them. And that feeling of oneness can deepen and become that profound and profoundly liberating experience we have when it comes over us suddenly that we are one with all people and with all things. But, and this is the point, let one false gesture, one hint of artificiality appear, and separateness comes again. Again, we're just looking at the people on the screen, and that whole experience of oneness, of identity, is lost. It cannot happen. It cannot be. The secret of Nanook is, I believe, in those two words, being themselves, not acting, but being.
After Nanook was made, a dinner was given in its honor in New York, I believe.
Yes, one of those big affairs. Because you see, Nanook was not just a new kind of film. It was a new use for the motion picture. Films like these could bring better understanding among all peoples. And the idea was that films like this should now become a public policy. And we, of course, were delighted, because it meant that a wonderful career stretched in front of us.